today in this deep dive is basically the disaster recovery site to site that we plan to introduce in Rev 4.2. So this basically gives the ability to automate any recovery operation of an oVirt or Rev setup to a secondary site. Now there are two things here that should be explained. There is the failover and there is the failback. First, we will talk about the failover, and failback is simply like a failover, but with a bit more functionality in it. So, okay, so basically, what the user or the customer needs to have before he starts to use this Ansible script and this new functionality that introduced in the oVirt. So the user basically should have two environments. One environment is the production environment. This is the environment that he works on. And the other environment is basically the backup environment. This environment, the backup environment, should have predefined data center, predefined cluster, and predefined hosts and networks, right? But he won't have any storage domains, VMs, templates, so on. So he should have pretty much a simple empty engine with only hosts to run the VMs that are crucial for the user to run those. In case of a disaster, what will happen is that the user should basically run the script, run some kind of an operation that will automatically import storage domains, replicated storage domains, and register the VMs and the templates. So basically, I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but the user should have two engines, as I said, but the storage domains should be replicated from each other. The primary site will have storage domains that will have read-write operations, and the secondary storage domain will have only read only for the replication to work. I'm sorry, but I see.
Yes.
Okay, so to do that, to achieve doing that, we had to add extra stuff to the OVF, extra attributes. Until now, the OVF of the VM and the template include only the VM disks and the VM name properties, but we didn't had any new attributes that we need those to basically maintain the same attributes that we had in the primary site. So we added, for example, a support for direct LAN disk. So now actually we can also support direct LAN disk in the OVF of the VM. If until now a user had a VM and he detached the storage domain and attached it to a different data center and registered this VM, he didn't see the external LAN disk because we didn't support it. And now we added the support for that, that we will have this minimal viable product for the customer that wants it. So we now support the direct LAN disk. We also support now affinity group, affinity label, permissions of VM, and also the cluster name. So basically now, until this change, a user registered the VM and picked the cluster that he wants this VM to be registered to, but there were a lot of missing properties that were not registered as part of this VM. And now the user actually gained a lot of functionality that are being added to the OVF. So yeah, as I said, permissions, cluster name, affinity, and so on. Okay. Before I will go to the Ansible and show the screencast, I just want to know if there is any questions. Yeah, I see a question here. All right, Javier. Any limitation on storage domain, like only block SDs? No, there are no limitations on storage domains. All storage domains should be supported. Basically, all the data storage domain, which means Gluster, to Javier question. So basically, the import until now, it was done almost on any type of storage domain. That means the FC, iSCSI, NFS, Gluster, POSIX, and what is more? I hope I don't miss anything. And it should be the same. We should support all those kinds. I can tell you that yeah, I don't see anything that is changing his behavior. So they should all be supported. I think that maybe Glance, or Cinder or stuff like that, they would not be supported. No. Okay. So Federico asks, does DR support Gluster in hyperconvergence setups? So I don't think so. The functionality of Ansible should be based on what we support today. I mean, there was no anything change in the import storage domains that were there. So I'm not sure about hyperconverged setups, but for example, hosted engine is still a gap that should be fixed later. But for now, if we talk about simple storage domains, if I say Gluster, I mean, mount of a Gluster storage domain. So it should be supported there. Yes. Okay, great. So I'm going to show you now a small demo. It's basically a video that shows how it's being done. I'm going to explain on the way what was done there, and let's go from there. So let me just open it. Yeah, okay. Screen. Okay, can you just let me know that you see the video? I stopped it for a minute just to know that it's working.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, great. Okay, so what we see here are two environments. The environment which is at the top is the production environment. The environment which is in the bottom is the secondary environment, the backup environment, right? So I'm working on the production environment, and I want to add some kind of a VM, and I want to edit a disk, and maybe move it a bit faster. Right, you want to edit a disk, we edit an affinity group and an affinity label, this new VM, and we want to edit also a permission probably. Those are the new functionalities that were introduced lately, right? So we use this kind of a new role, and that's about it. And we run this VM. Now the idea is that in a disaster, we want to have the ability to register this VM to the secondary site, right? I'm going to stop for a second. To the secondary, we want to add this VM to the secondary site and know that it was running and run it. We should know which VMs were running before. Okay, the problem here with the difference between the environments, I'm going to take a bit step back here, is that the affinity group in the production environment might be different than the affinity group in the test environment. Also the permissions. I mean, it could be that in the secondary environment, because it's a backup environment, we might have just one user that is admin and he has all the permissions for itself. And in the production environment, we probably have some kind of user that have a specific role. So we want to map those changes. We want to map, for example, that one role is actually a different role in the test environment. And we want to say that if the VM was running in a cluster that is called production cluster, then if you will register it to the secondary site, it will register to the temporary cluster. So we should write those maps. So basically, before we run the Ansible script that does all this migration, we pass it some kind of a mapping. So this mapping, I will show you also later, is something like that, right? So as you can see here, there is a different mapping. For example, the primary name of cluster is cluster prod, and the secondary name is cluster recovery. Also affinity label. Here are the role mapping. So in the primary site, user which will have permission, a role that will be VM creator, it will be mapped to power user role, for example. So now we added, for example, a VM, right? And we add this VM a role. So we want to map this role to be compatible to the secondary site. So we added the user role, right? And now we want to edit. We want to change it to cluster admin when it will be fail over. Also, the domain map, if, for example, we use some kind of AAA mapping in the primary site, which was called, I don't know, new, it could be QA or engineer. So probably in the secondary site, it will be internal. Yeah, it's something else. 1 second, I see a question. Yeah, the create and the modify. Okay, so let me just repeat the question. Marina asked, actually you need to create and modify this file manually for each specific environment, or we will have some default file customers that we can start from. Yeah, so good question. We should add an automatic Ansible play that will generate this mapping file. This mapping file is also for storage domains, for example. So what will happen is that we will generate this file. It will have whatever we have on the production environment, and the user himself will need to get into this mapping file and add the missing attributes that needs to be mapped. Okay, so for example, if we have a storage domain in the primary site that is running on, I don't know, on a host that is its IP is, I don't know, 1.2, for example. So the user will need to map it to IP of, I don't know, 30.50. So basically the mapping should be generated automatically, but the user will still have to put the extra data to know where actually we need to go. Does that answer your question, by the way, or do you have other question maybe?
So is this would come as part of, I don't know, RevM RPM, or it's something that, or maybe you cover this software?
So this will come, all these Ansible scripts will come part of the, for now, part of the oVirt engine oVirt Ansible. Those will be RPMs, if I'm not mistaken. And the user will simply run those RPMs, and those should work, as an independent RPM on the customer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I will show you later how the mapping really looks like. I just want to show you on the video first to get the feeling of how it's going to work, right? So so as I show here, those are the mappings, and I can add here also. Okay, so now what we do is that we simulate kind of a disaster. So I do a reboot on the host, on the host that was in primary site, if it's ruined, and then we do some kind of replication. We demo replication. We just copy the storage domains from one site to another. Okay, now that's tricky thing that needs to be remembered. We should wait for several, like 80 seconds, because the replication of the storage domains, what will happen is that it will also copy the logs of Sunlock. And because now, because there is no host to renew those locks, we need to wait for 80 seconds for those locks to be freed, and then those domains should be imported successfully. So we still talk about it, how it's going to be done. I mean, the use case for customers is probably that, it's when a disaster occurs, until the user will start the failover, we will already pass for the 80 seconds, but we just need to know that this might be a problem if you test it and try it immediately to recover. Sorry, I see a question. Roman, are there any plans to integrate the Ansible scripts with the UI so you do not have to go to the console to run it? That's a good question. We actually talked about it. We talked about it a bit, if it should be integrated through the UI or not. For now, we didn't do it because we thought that maybe we can have a chance to not be dependent on the oVirt version. We thought that maybe we can use it for 4.1. So we started with the Ansible, just using through Ansible, but I think that eventually we will have some kind of a nice UI to do that. But it's like phase 3 or something, but it's on the roadmap. So let's go back to the video. So we do some kind of copy the storage domains, and we start the failover. Here you can see basically the Ansible script working. Okay, as you can see here, there is the primary site. All the storage domains are basically inactive because the host is dead. And we start to run this script and start to add the storage domains. So as you can see, the secondary storage domain is now running, and we add those storage domains to it. 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So we add the storage domains, and now we start to register the VM. So as you can see now, from nothing, we have a new VM, which is called testing VM. We remember the testing VM was running before that on the production, so we run it automatically. Keep in mind that the running of the VM, what we do is that we know that in the secondary site, we might have less resources than at primary site. So we are not sure that we will run all the VMs. So what we do is that we first run the highly available VMs that were running before that. And then after those were running, we start to run all the rest of the VMs. If those VMs, if the host will not have enough resources, then it's not a problem. I mean, at least the highly available will run. So as you can see here, I want to show you the mapping, how it works. So you see here there are 2 VMs, right? The Fedora and the and this. And as you can see here, you see the affinity groups, which is called here affinity prod, was mapped to affinity recovery and added this VM. We have also the permission. So you can see here that you remember that we did some kind of mapping. So you can see that the VM creator of Maor Lipchuk was mapped to power user role in the other site, and also it was the authorization provider was new auth, and it was mapped to internal because this is how it works there. Yeah. We also map external LAN disks, for example, and we should support those. Here you can see that we added before, if you remember, the user role. We mapped it to a new thing that was, I think, I don't know if it's cluster admin or we changed it, but yeah, maybe it was cluster admin. So you see the role was mapped again with the authorization provider. Okay, so that's about it for the video. So I can show you the code, maybe the mapping. I can show you the Ansible script, what we did there. I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I was wondering if what will be interesting more for you, or what do you think will be best to show? What are you interested in? So don't be shy. I guess that I can start. Okay, I have a question. Sure. Let's wait like for a few minutes, and if there will be nothing, that I can show you just the mapping and how the Ansible, what I did with Ansible. So.
Maor, I do want to see just, what I would like to see the source code, absolutely, but it can take a few minutes, not something extensive. What I want to go back to your first slide. I know we were talking about different options for disaster recovery, right? I remember there was stretch cluster, active. I don't think active were doing this, or this is called active. I want to understand better the terminology. And sometimes customers will open a ticket and say, hey, I do this, and we don't always know how to correlate it to what we have. So if you can help us with terminology also.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a good question. So stretch cluster, and not sure about active. Stretch cluster is mainly a different feature. I don't want to go into this presentation because maybe it might take some time, and I know that someone else is working on it, so I don't want to say anything wrong. But basically, mainly the stretch cluster or the active is one setup that has two clusters which are working, and you migrate from one cluster to another, but it's in the same engine, in the same setup. And only the clusters with the hosts are configured on a different, I don't know, sites in the far away sites from each other. This presentation is mainly for site to site. It's a different approach. It's one of few solutions that we introduce, and we will introduce in DR. As I said, stretch cluster is one. I think that if you want to go into stretch cluster and the active, I think that we should have some kind of separate deep dive, because it has its benefits, or its another thing. That's what I want to say. Is it okay, or sorry?
Yeah, I personally wanted to understand and make sure that we know how to call things. So what we're doing here is a site to site, right?
Yeah.
Are there other names for this solution?
Not that I'm aware of. It's site to site. It means that there is failover, there is failback. Uh, Failover, failback are, I think that those are really related to the site to site, to what I showed you today. I think that regarding I know what you mean about the semantic and everything. But I think that regarding what you say about scratch clusters and active, it's not related to this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. But I can understand your question. I mean, it's important, especially for you that you talk with customers to know that. I see that. Okay, Roman had a question first. How are we going to document the configuration? Is there already some documentation available for the DR Ansible scripts? Okay, so yes, actually, we are starting to work now with the documentation team to document this scenario. It's still under work. I have a Google Doc that I wrote there all the flow, more technical issues, more gaps that we need to know. It's like taking the whole setup and run it automatically. So we had a lot of gaps. As you can see, we also added in the OVF, we added a lot of functionalities, new functionalities that haven't been there before. So, there are a lot of gaps, a lot of stuff that needs to be done and needs to be known. But that all should be eventually documented, and especially regarding the technical stuff about how to run Ansible and how to run those scripts as well. So it's a good question, and in the future we'll have this. Okay, Miguel asked, both engines are required to be running to perform the failover. Yeah, both engines should be active, should be running, should have hosts which are running on them. The user basically should be aware or check first that all the storage domains there could be connected to the host. One thing that I want to mention also, the script is working in an eager mode. What it means that, if you fail to register the VM because of a problem, we don't stop the process. We will just register another VM, we run this VM, we run how much that we can. Same for storage domains. If a storage domain can be registered, then we can't do anything. We will just run it. We just attach the other storage domain. Okay.
I'm sorry. Maybe I don't understand something. So what's the point of DR? If both manage, maybe I misunderstood. Why the first manager may be down? I don't see.
No, but the first, what I mean is that, okay, thanks for clearing that out. What I mean is I mainly focused on the failover that the secondary site must be up. Yes, the primary sites, I assume that it will have a disaster and it won't be up, of course. But I meant that in the secondary site, you must have all the running hosts and everything. In the failback, you will need to have both setups running, because the first setup, we will have to deactivate all the storage domains nicely and detach those, and the primary site will attach those storage domains as well. So thanks for letting me know. Yes, on failover, basically only the secondary sites must be up. On the failback, we will have to have both engines up. Of course, unless I don't know, the user can also, if the replication went successfully and the storage domain are replicated, basically the user can only do that with the target engine. So that can be done also with the target engine that is running. I hope that that's okay. Other question? Okay, wait, I see Javier also asks a question. Set aside sounds like active passive solution, right? Although the resources in the passive sites are running.
Yeah, that was more like just to rephrase what Marina was talking about the terminology we are going to use with the customer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I know active passive for in a network that one network is down, so the other is up. It's yeah, and the DR, the operation itself should be much complicated because of the attach operation that takes time. But yeah, this is something you can say it something like that. Okay, any more questions maybe? Okay, thank you, Marina, also for clearing that out. So I'm going to show you a bit of the mapping, how it looks like. It will take just a few minutes. I don't want to, just. Oh, Frank asks, is there logging in case of failures? That's a good question. Yeah, we plan to add some kind of both kinds of logs. Okay, so you will have one log, which is the Ansible log, which will basically be the output that of the REST API of the engine. Okay, if you, for example, try to register a VM and fail, then you will get some kind of a response that will say that we'll give you what you sent and the error that was that came back from the engine. That's one log. But at the end of this play that will be played for the recovery, eventually you should see there the list of entities that registered successfully and the list of entities that failed to be registered. If it's VMs or storage domains or whatever, it should say to you, I succeed to register this, and that, and failed in that. So it should be added there. Okay, another question. If a VM failed for a temporary issue, when is proceeded, there is a way to rerun the proceed for the failed VMs. Regarding failed VMs, yeah, you can have this ability. If you run the recovery again, what will happen is that actually what happens is that he goes through the storage domains and I think it is not. Yeah, I mean, okay. So what I want to say is that in the Ansible script, how it goes is that it's first import all the storage domains and then try to fetch all the templates and register the templates. Then fetch all the unregistered VMs, register all the VMs, and then fetch all the floating disks and register all the disks. This is how it goes. Now, if the engine is already being imported with all these storage domains, what will be done is that the storage domain will try to import. They will see that the storage domains already exist, and it will just pass the task. So then it will just go to the unregistered VM. It will see a VM that is unregistered, and eventually register this VM in the second run if you run it again. Yeah, and as Marina said, it's there could be VMs. For example, what we do is we do eager run. So you could have some kind of scenario that a VM will have two disks on two storage domains, and one storage domain, for example, will be failed to be imported, but the other storage domain will be imported successfully, and then we will register the VM partially because it's eager, right? So we import the VM just with one disk. So eventually, if you will want to run the Ansible script again, it will import the storage domain again, and it will see there that there is some kind of VM, but it's already registered, and we don't support adding disks to registered VMs that are unregistered. So it will just it will fail to register the VM again because it's already exists. So there could be some kind of scenarios. For now, this is how it goes. We do eager, and whatever we can, we just try to recover as fast as we can. Okay, Nijin is asking, is it possible to do a partial failover? For example, would it be possible to fail over only one data center if the user is having many data centers in the primary engine? Great question. Now I will show you the mapping and we will see how it can be done. So let me just open the mapping. Share screen. Okay, so this is the mapping file. As you can see here, there is the primary side, there is the secondary side. Each one has a different URL, a different username, CA file, whatever. And here are the storage domain. Now, Nijin asked a good question. He asked, what if you want to do it only with one data center? So only the storage domains that are configured here are the ones that we want to do some kind of a failback from them. So what you can do is basically take one data center, take just this storage domain and configure them here. So here, for example, you have the DR primary DC name. So we only do it for prod, for example. And this is the secondary DC name, which is recovery. And so we only configure those storage domains in this setup, and all the mapping that I showed you before, also the plans. And eventually, we can do it only for one data center. It depends on how the user will want to do it. We will generate some kind of a mapping file, and the user will choose what he wants to map and what he wants not to map, and it should be good. So let's see here. Yeah, so I showed you the mapping eventually, so it's good. I think that I can share with you the links to Ansible and links to the work that was being done there, the PR and everything, the pull request, I mean, and you can see how it works. I can also share with you the video that I did. I think that yeah, if you have maybe any more questions.
So another question, please. So you said you're going to introduce changes to OVF file and VM. So for instance, I have a customer that's running Ref 4.0, or the customer upgraded to Ref 4.2, but he has still a data center in 4.0 compatibility mode. Would this procedure work? What are the requirements for the customer, to meet to be able to use the solution?
Okay, so regarding DR side to side, the user should guarantee that both setups should be at the same level of cluster compatibility, at the same level of DC compatibility, right? Because if you run a VM that has some kind of functionality, I don't know, like NUMA or something new, or I don't know what, the recovery to a different setup, the hosts there should support the functionality that this VM has. So basically, this is the requirement that we ask for the user before using this DR. Regarding the functionality of oVirt, of registration, just simple registration of VM, that should be supported. I mean, as before, there was no any big change. I mean, I know that we have this ability to register a VM that was on 4.0 to a 4.2, and in the worst case, he won't have the functionality that a VM in 4.2 has because it came from 4.0. But the registration should be the same. The Ansible script is basically based on all the functionality that is being done today. And again, as I mentioned before, since the user must guarantee that both sites should have the same capabilities regarding compatibility level, that should not be a problem, I think. Does that answer your question?
Sort of, I guess. We'll see. I mean, it makes sense what you're saying, but again, if I am, so you say if my data center in 4.0 compatibility mode, I'm just concerned about OVF structure. I guess it should work from what I see.
Yeah, regarding OVF structure, we always use this kind of pessimistic way. I mean, we first ask if there is this kind of attribute in the VM OVF, and if there is this attribute, we ask if it has some kind of value, and if it doesn't, then we just register this VM without it. We don't have some kind of I don't know, some kind of known issues there. I think that maybe the other way around might be a problem. I think the way if you take a VM from 4.2 and you will try to register it to 4.0, then you might have a problem because there are new OS IDs that are, I know, in the oVirt side that might be reflect about the VM. But it's just some kind of a fictional use case. Why should a user downgrade his VM from 4.2 to 4.0? But regarding what you asked about going from 4.0 to 4.2, I think it's a valid use case and it should work. I mean, if it doesn't work, then there is a bug. We should solve it probably because it's a use case that's being done. Okay, thanks. Okay. Yeah, another question, DFW. I have a comment. Okay, you have a comment. Yeah, okay. I think it's Gordon. I'm not sure. GFW. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, it's me.
Okay, so he said, yeah, there is some kind of typo. You're right. Yeah, we thought about it. It's a good question. We will try to use some kind of, like comments, like how it should be done, and the user should, just replace the comments there. I didn't read till the end. My concern is that we will be bugging as user. Yeah. We also thought about doing some kind of a sanity check before starting this. Check that all the hosts are running, check that all the domains are alive and can be connected. It's something that's crossed our minds. It's like the beta, so we don't have it. We don't have it now, but I guess that this should be addressed. Yeah, I mean, I think also that there are a few gaps that needs to be known and will be documented of some kind of a failure points that might happen in the middle. And yeah, we should address it. That's definitely something we should address. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what was said before about a UI interface, so that if there were a UI interface, then that would presumably take care of this issue, because or mainly take care of it. But it just seems like if this is completely open for anyone to edit it, it's just there's going to be problems in that area.
Yeah,
I would assume.
I totally agree. We do plan eventually to move it to some kind of a GUI, mainly also the parameter, the mapping file that you said. Yeah, that should be addressed. I will also see that it's addressed also in the documentation, and that there is this kind of gap. And you're right. Okay, yeah, we have 3 minutes left, actually 2 minutes. So, okay, I tell you what, I'm gonna share with you what we got till now. As I said, the video and links to the to the code. And if you have any question, feel free to respond in the mail or send me a private message. And every idea or every suggestion might be like really good from you guys, because you're more close to customers and what's ticks them, what's not. Now Gordon asked if this is a tech preview. No, because the minimal viable product should be supported. The minimal viable product basically is register a VM from one site to another site with direct LANs. That basically works. All the rest are kinds of gaps that should be addressed, but for now it's not a tech preview from what I know of. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Thank you, Marina. Yeah, turning it off. Okay, so bye for now, and